I'll be honest, I think it probably stopped really quickly because the phone, locked itself. Do we want to go through from start? Take it from the top. I Eat Paintings is a deeply weird hidden object game about eating art. You decipher the clues, you move around these paintings, you learn a bit about them, and at the end of the day, you come away with a very full stomach. So making the game educational was never like the primary focus, but it was always the secondary. It's about the art and it's also about the humour of it. It wasn't really about making stupid jokes at the expense of the art. And so from very early on in our design decisions, we wanted to make sure that we were collecting information about these paintings. And as we did the research and chose certain paintings for certain reasons, we made sure we were reading up on them and what they were about and the interesting sort of things going on in the art world at the time, trends and sort of genres of painting that came in and out of fashion. And we basically wanted to make sure that this game, while it was interesting, was also going to teach you something. There's nothing better than having fun and also coming away from a game with some extra knowledge. It's why I've always liked survival games so much, because I feel like I know more of if I was ever to be in like a zombie apocalypse. You know, I could totally go and filter some water or something. I've got charcoal. And so having made a game that's informational as well as fun, it basically makes it feel like it is doing more than one job. And, you know, if you can do more than one job with a single game, why wouldn't you? This I Eat Paintings joke came from a Tumblr post back in the day. And, you know, you'd see these people walking into art galleries with the shirts that say, I eat paintings or I eat oil paintings when security guards aren't looking. Hilarious. And so I thought I'd take this sort of classic joke and really expand upon it and have this, you know, the grade A weirdo main character running through the galleries and chewing up these paintings. I thought it'd be just so much fun.
I quickly realised when I was showing it to people that they were laughing with the game, not at it. And so we started to take it a little more seriously after a few months of development to really push it out to a proper release. My wife, who does all the writing in the game, all the clues and descriptions, really wanted to highlight the weirdness that's inherent in this game and also highlight some of the really interesting details you may not notice in some of these paintings. Some of the stuff we've pushed people to try and find is some of the stuff you've likely glazed over in the painting. So they'll look at it and go, why is this over there? What's this part of the painting telling us about the narrative of this scene? In the second level of the game, we've got some kids that are just blasting this poor nun with a trumpet. It's a really funny scene, and you're likely to just focus on the kids. But if you take a deeper look like we've asked you to, you'll find some stuff that's been scattered around, and you'll find some really interesting bits of symbolism. It just takes looking at a painting for a bit more time and through a different lens to really appreciate some of the details in them. MC came from basically main character. I didn't want to name him. Honestly, I think it makes him better to be this kind of mysterious figure. It's alluded to often in the game that he's maybe not human, and by not having him have a name or knowing anything about him, he just really wants to eat the paintings. It has this sort of humour to it. So MC is just main character.
Is it going to be a revelation to you now that you've created a character that's so deeply weird, whose name is MC, and it's like MC Escher, who is also deeply weird with his paintings? Was that not intentional?
Nope. So, yep. I often find with this game that, especially because we do so many wordplay things, people will come to us and say, oh, that was so smart and funny that you said this thing, but it meant that thing, and we sit there and go, does it?
Yeah, sure. Yes, that was very intentional. I am very wise and clever.
We could call him MC Eater.
The player is definitely the problem. I've been inspired by a lot of games where you are playing characters that are chaotic, but not evil. I don't like playing evil characters in games. It makes me feel bad. But games like Untitled Goose Game or Katamari Damacy, I've mispronounced that to hell, but Katamari and games like that where you're playing little chaos gremlins that are just causing mayhem to the people around you, but not in like in a really malicious way. More in a you are just inherently chaotic and that is your nature type situation. That's what I find really interesting about characters that are bad but not evil, or chaotic but not evil. So Untitled Goose Game is probably one of my key inspirations for the tone of the main character. The goose in Untitled Goose Game is such a chaotic little gremlin as well, and the appeal that everyone sort of found when Untitled Goose Game came out of just being like a little chaos gremlin that's causing trouble. You're not being evil in that game. It's a cozy game, but you are being a problem. I found that that's such a hilarious sort of position to put the main character or the player in. I also found the humour in that game to be really appealing, and it probably makes sense, you know. The developers of Untitled Goose Game are Australian. I'm also Australian. It probably really appeals to our Australian sense of humour. I think weird for me is a sort of a difference from the normal, right? I'd consider myself to be a pretty weird person, and so would most of the people I went to high school with. I think in this context for the game, weird just means that this main character is not like everyone else. You know, everyone else around him does not want him running around and eating these oil paintings. And we've sort of hinted to that in the narrative of the game that something is happening here. The humour itself has lots of like puns, and it has lots of like double meanings. In particular, the riddles for like the clues and stuff. So much of that is really complex. You've got to know quite a few words, or you've got to have some really specialist knowledge. Like, this is a game for the autistics, really. At the end of the day, this is a game that for somebody with like really specialist knowledge, and it's a game for me. This is a game that I could play really easily, and as an indie developer, sometimes you've got to really just make a game for you. And if other people like it, that's incredible. But if you don't like the game you're making, why are you even making it? Like a lot of people, I grew up playing lots of games when I was a kid, and hidden object games hold a bit of a special place in my heart. When I was a kid, often I'd sit shoulder to shoulder with my younger brother, and we'd play games together. Even if they were single player games. Be like pointing things out and going, oh, go over there, find that. Found it. Well, I didn't write them down, okay.
You're a liar. You didn't play any games with your brother.
Well, the games that I played with my brother were generally Grand Theft Auto, but I don't want to say that. But it's very cursed because we were like 8. And the only way we were allowed to play Grand Theft Auto as 8-year-olds, though, was because if we turned the sound all the way down so we couldn't hear the swear words.
My stepdad, who is a school teacher, who put this game about like murdering people on and would have all these little challenges we'd do. Like going from the starting base to find the jetpack, getting into the restricted zone, and then get out of the restricted zone without getting shot. Or another favourite of ours, you had to carjack somebody and then go down the boardwalk and see how many people you could run over. You know, just normal 8-year-old things.
So when I was a kid, I played a lot of Nintendo 64 and PS2 games, but I also was very privileged as a kid to have a PC, or my dad's PC, but you know, it's the family PC. And so when I was a kid, one of the things that I thought was deeply interesting, but I thought it was really weird and bizarre, was this flash game about McDonald's from when I was, you know, I was probably 7 or 8. And this flash game about McDonald's was like about how terrible they were as a company, but it was a management sim about like running the farm and running the business, and how all of this in collaboration was just destroying the environment and screwing over the people. And I was like, this is incredible. This is games as activism. I've never even thought about something like this. And it was like a weird game with like a really interesting and engaging game loop. And I just thought it was delightful. You know, I also played a lot of stuff on the PC that was more casual, like bubble popping sort of games, and, you know, the sorts of smaller casual projects that small teams could be making. One of the things that really inspired me from my school days, though, was this program that they used to have on the school computers called KidPix. Now, if you were over my age, because it was really going out of fashion when I was getting into it, so maybe over 30. If you're over 30, you might have heard of this in schools, and you probably have a memory of like scribbling around and the mouse as you're sort of moving and adding these drawing elements would make sound effects and then blowing this painting up, and it would have this epilepsy-inducing, like, flashing rah, 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 as it blew the things up. It was so much fun. It was a ton of inspiration for tools as creation, but also tools as play. You know, you really played with the art in this program, and it was such an inspiration for me as a young kid. A few years back, when I got to go over to the US for a conference, I actually saw a version of Kid Pix in a museum, and I went, oh my God, memory unlocked. This was such a key part of my creative process as a 10-year-old that it was just incredible to see it again so many years later and have it go, wait a second, that totally did exist. It wasn't just me imagining it. And I think as well, the last thing that inspired me in this context is, like, Where's Wally and I Spy books. You know, you do enough road trips as a kid and you've played so much I Spy throughout the car window, but the books themselves were always laid out so interestingly. I've never been very good at visual puzzles, you know, those ones where you need to, like, unfocus your eyes and all that sort of stuff. I've never been very good at those. The Where's Wally books and the I Spy books, you could just tell so much care and attention and love went into those books. It was hours of fun. I was astounded to realize as a kid that you could actually look at the books when you weren't on the toilet, because they lived in our toilet on a, like, toilet sort of book rack, and I'm like, wow, I can take these out of the toilet and keep playing with them. That's incredible. It was a real revelation as a kid. I really, really think that all games are art, but I think there is an interesting perspective where people consider them to be business. And I think art and business have a weird relationship. Artists want to be able to make more art. They need to be able to sell the art in our current systems, and therefore they need to make art that is sellable, and therefore they need to make art that is mass appeal. I think a lot of games are made with such a mass appeal, a mass market appeal, that I don't know who they're being made for. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think everyone should be able to play what they like playing, but I think that's just a really boring way to function. Well, I think people are too serious in general. You know, I don't feel the need to make art my full-time job. If you're at all knowledgeable about how the games industry has gone in the last 5 years, it would be, I think, a bit of an omission to say that games aren't having problems right now. And I think a good perspective of it is that a whole lot of games have a lot of investment that just aren't really capturing audiences. I think that is a problem. At the end of the day, I'm just out here making silly little indie games. I don't think it's my problem. Yeah. I think the more interesting bits of art from games comes from projects where you are not trying to turn a commercial success. When you don't have the pressure of being financially successful, it allows you to really make art that works for you and works for niche audiences, and therefore is more interesting. I think we could all do with a bit more whimsy in our lives. Just everyone, really. Even though we need to be serious in our day-to-day lives, it doesn't mean we have to be miserable. And I think a bit of whimsy goes a long way into making a life full of variety and spice. One of my favourite things in the game, my favourite items that you can eat, has got to be the corkscrew item in the Van Gogh painting. It is shaped like a bird, and it is a corkscrew. Now, if you know the joke, you'll find this hilarious, and I just find it so funny that people were making this joke in the 1800s of bird-shaped corkscrews. It just speaks to humour passed throughout the ages, and I just think it would be really interesting and quite funny to see one of these painters take a look at this game that I've made. Maybe they'd hate it, but maybe they'd think it was really funny too. So in some of the paintings, they had a cat, and I had this moment of like, aha, where on Steam, there is a lot of hidden cats, like hidden object cat games. And we really wanted to be able to have little nods to industry norms. And so when we realized that there was cats in some of these, we went, what if you could like click the cats, but you couldn't eat the cats? Because, you know, you don't want to eat the cats. But if you could click the cats and they like meow and like have a little achievement that you found them, wouldn't that be an almost additional game within a game, and a little nod to the industry. And so when we found that, I had to go down the whole rabbit hole of painting cats into every single painting that didn't already have a cat. And it was just, well, it was a lot of fun, but it was also a really interesting experience of having to like color match and figure out how to draw cats in and make them hidden but not too hidden and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, so I think the cats are ridiculous, but you cannot not have the cats. So we have 2 cats here at home, and one of the cats is definitely based on our cat. I think did we end up getting the other one in? I think we might have. Although one of our cats is a lot more photogenic and easy to depict because she's got like simple colorings. I definitely painted the other one, but I don't think we called her name in the game. So we're giving her a nominee. So people can find paintings when guards aren't looking on Steam now.
Right now.
Right now.
Right now.